Well, the philosophy of the right tree in the right place for the right purpose has been widely discussed, but the how we achieve that is the work of the 1 Billion Tree Program, funded by Te Uru Rakau, with supporting funding from Dairy NZ, Living Water, which is a Fonterra DOC partnership, the Waikato Regional Council, Bay of Plenty Regional Council, Forest Growers Research Horizon Regional Council, and Farmlands. Now, Daniel started with Perrin Ag in June and brings both farming and business know-how to his first project, working as part of a larger team to complete work for the 1 Billion Trees program. This is an initiative that aims to increase tree planting across New Zealand, reaching 1 billion trees planted by 2028. Daniel Payton, welcome to Sarah's Country.
Yeah, good day, Sarah. How are you?
Good. Now, as well as your 8 years of dairy farming, you have also been involved in various roles within the industry. Can you tell us about your background and what's led you to this role with Perrin Ag?
I suppose I'm a bit of a jack of all trades and master of none. At the moment, I consider myself a South Islander on my OE. I've been in the North Island for the last few years now. Probably when you marry someone from the Hawke's Bay, you can't quite drag them south. But so I first started when I left Lincoln. I was actually in Rotorua here as a graduate working for Landcorp. That sort of led me to the supervising large-scale sheep and beef stations on the East Coast. So I did that for a few years, both up here and then down in Wellington, followed by the quintessential Kiwi OE. Followed my now wife chased her across overseas. And when we came back, I got into banking in Marlborough. That's where I'm from originally, top of the South Island, a place called Rye Valley, and thoroughly enjoyed it. But after a couple of years, I sort of got sick of being behind the desk, so I sort of jumped back into farming. I grew up on a dairy farm, so dairy farming is easy to get back into. I did that and sort of found myself going through the share milking and contract milking route, and then so I spent the last 5 years in Taranaki there, and then I suppose you've got to think a little bit more about yourself, and my kids and my wife sort of put the pressure on a little bit, and we sort of got out of that. The idea was to eventually head back into a real professional role, and sort of this is where I found myself. I didn't think I'd end up back in Rotorua doing this, but I knew Perrin. It was a good company with a good reputation, and so here I am, really, yeah.
And I suppose why I wanted to paint the picture is that you've got an ex-farmer hat, bringing to it some practicalities around a very ambitious goal of 1 billion trees. And when we're trying to achieve this right tree in the right place, the practicalities are at the table. Can you lead us down the path of the objectives of this particular study you're doing with the 1 Billion Trees program?
Yeah, so you've definitely summed it up. The mantra is the right tree in the right place. So it is a project. It's it's probably the most thorough and in-depth one that's been done so far, and it includes actual case studies. There's 10 case studies on actual farms, and it's to actually do an in-depth analysis on how to integrate trees, tree planting into farming systems. What we're finding, it's nothing new really, that a lot of farmers, they do want to integrate forestry or tree planting into their existing systems. But what we're finding is it's not just for economic gains or benefits. Like, a lot of it could be for environmental or aesthetics. So it's not just about planting pine trees and earning money from timber or carbon revenue. Like, pine trees definitely have their place. But we're finding that, the farmers, they have a lot of other reasons as well. And it's just to try and find how the 1 Billion Trees project can sort of be practically applied. I suppose it's an aspirational target that the government has set, and how is it actually going to work on the ground?
Let's talk about the particular varieties of trees, and redwood has been identified, as well as totara. What are some of those scenarios where it can be integrated very beautifully within the farming system but still be commercially viable?
Okay, so redwood, currently there's there's an emerging commercial market for redwood trees in New Zealand. So the New Zealand Redwood Company are doing a lot with timber. Overseas, it's huge. In California, it's actually an endangered species. It's big for the domestic industry over there, so they have been investing in other countries. New Zealand's one of them. And it's also got a benefit as sort of carbon sequestration. So as a carbon sink, whether it be permanent or long-term, it's a longer rotation tree than pine. And for totara, it's sort of an emerging one. It's we're sort of looking around natives for timber, for timber and biodiversity, really. So one example of that is growing what we call a cover crop. So it could be manuka, and you get the benefit of, you can either use it for sort of manuka honey or carbon potential, and then after sort of 3 years, you'll plant totara seedlings through the manuka, and it encourages the totara to grow upright. And over long term, we're talking intergenerational, really. It might be 80 years out. There's timber benefit as well as, a biodiversity benefit in the forest.
What sort of work do you do with Perrin Ag and in terms of modelling these types of returns over various periods as well, so that you do have that sort of scattered biodiversity plan and bringing that into that freshwater management plan and a bigger ecosystem and holistic approach to the farm systems in general?
So we do. We've got someone from PF Olsen helping us with the actual forestry. We're specialist help there for forestry modelling. They are partners in the project as well. And so we sort of do a full, as a commercial forester, we do full long-term modelling, harvest scheduling, silviculture regime, everything like that. And also we do the usual, I suppose, the modelling in terms of overseer farm acts on farm systems, see the impact of planting, say, marginal land, and also for greenhouse gas emissions, to see what reductions can be made, because that's something that's sort of on the radar at the moment, fast approaching by 2025. Yeah.
And that's actually a very good point, because when it comes to that carbon calculator, so to speak, that Tutoe and Varakera are bringing into the system, there's as you said, a range of different sequestration rates of different types of trees. Is it sort of be able to pass on to farmers so that if they want to have a variety of native and exotics within their farm systems, that they can have that sort of type of mapping of calculation? Or are we still at that point where we're obsessed with radiata pine?
We are, unfortunately. Yeah, like at the moment, nothing beats pine over the short term. It's something we've been breeding pine trees for the last probably 80 years in New Zealand. We've definitely enhanced what was the original, Pinus radiata species to what it is now. But there's sort of been a lack of research and development on other species. But also the way that the ETS, how to describe it, probably calculates carbon sequestration. There's a lot of difference there. Like, not a lot of research has been done on other species, and that's part of the issue. It's sort of starting to happen now. Like, they have been doing sort of research on sequestration rates of different native species. There's an outfit called Tane's Trees Trust that has been doing a lot of work. And also the way the ETS works is that they use lookup tables, which is to standardised rates for native forestry, irrespective of what the actual species is. If it's under 100 hectares, if it's over 100 hectares, they'll actually do plot samples of the actual forest, which is a lot more accurate. So there's a lot of devil in the detail in the legislation. So unfortunately, other species are handicapped at the moment until there's a lot more data out there.
Hey, thank you so much, Daniel Payton, who is now a consultant with Perrin Ag and a former farmer, joining us there on Sarah's Country. Some fascinating information around sequestration rates and how much more work we need to do in this space. Probably to our listeners and viewers of Sarah's Country, probably no surprise, but it sounds like the right people are at the table looking at this and to support farmers to be not only environmentally on the right track, but profitable businesses as well.
This is Sarah's Country.